Hey, I want to tell you the same thing, man. It's so good to see you. And hey, if I have not had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is Dusty, and I'm one of the pastors on staff here. And it's just an honor. It's an honor to just be one of the pastors here, part of such a great church. And it's an honor to just share my heart with you for a little bit. And I'm excited about this because we are kicking off a brand new series today called Hot Takes. Hot Takes. And throughout this series, we're going to be looking at some of the most astounding, astonishing, polarizing, attention-grabbing, whatever other adjective that you want to use, statements that Jesus made as he walked this earth, as he was preaching and performing miracles. And really, that's what a hot take is. It's a statement that brings with it at least a little bit of controversy, a little bit of debate. It's a statement that's so bold that it actually can create a divide in the room. I'll give you an example really quickly. I love pizza. Come on, anybody love pizza? Hey, this is a group project, by the way. We're about to all embark on a group project. Here we go. I need y'all to help me here. How many of you love pizza? All right. I also love pineapple. Come on, anybody like pineapple? Y'all probably can see where I'm going with this. How many of you believe that pineapple should not ever go on pizza? Come on. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I got somebody that's really excited about that. You see what I did there? I just divided the room, like right off the bat, because there's definitely some of you that do believe that pineapple should belong on pizza. Okay. All right, that's how we're going to, yeah. All right. Hey, let me give you another one. On social media, if you are on social media, there was a question that got raised a couple months ago. Really, it was a question from like 2 years ago, and it just resurfaced like 2 months ago. And it was just this crazy, weird question that said, who would win in a fight, 100 men or one gorilla? Can anybody see that question floating out there? If you didn't, that's okay. You're probably better off anyway. It's just weird. I don't even know how such a hypothetical could gain so much traction, but it split so many people on social media because we got so many arguing one side and other people arguing the other side, and they're so emphatic about their stance on this. And here's my hot take. I believe that 100 men definitely could defeat one gorilla. Come on. Anybody believe that? Anybody feel that way? No? Okay. Cool. Y'all think that a gorilla would beat 100 men? Okay. Listen, this ain't that type of message. I can't really spend too much time here, but I'm just saying you got to trust me on this. I did some research. All right. Hey, let me give you another one. Those are a little lighthearted. Let me give you something that's more near and dear to my heart. This is a hot take that I'm hanging my hat on in 2025. In 2025, my Jacksonville Jaguars are going to go to the Super Bowl. Come on, yeah, let me hear it. Come on, we got any Jags fans? Duval, there we go. All right, hey, by the way, we're recording this, so if you were laughing at me, if it actually happens, y'all owe me $100, okay? Here's the deal. Nothing what I just said, I was not able to get 100% of you to agree with me on anything that I just said. And really, that's the whole idea of a hot take. It's controversial. There's debate to be involved. There's division that it can cause. And can I just kind of spoil this series for you for just a little bit? Whatever message is preached, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that everything that Jesus said was a hot take. Because the way that everything Jesus said, the way he conducted his life, went against societal norms. We're talking about a man who would walk in front of crowds of people, and he would preach messages that would say things like this: to get back at your enemy, you have to love him. It's a hot take. He would go on to say things like, in order to find life, you must die to yourself. It's a hot take. The first shall be last, and the last shall be... It's a hot take. He would even say things like this. If your enemy slaps you on the cheek, this is how I know me and Jesus didn't grow up in the same area, by the way. If your enemy slaps you on the cheek, go ahead and turn the other cheek and let him slap that one also. And that's the one that gets most of you, right? Because you're like, Jesus, you had me. You know, like I can do whatever you're asking. But if somebody slaps me on my cheek, man, I'm decking them in the face and I'm asking for forgiveness later. Come on, anybody? Yeah? Okay, just me? Cool. Listen, it's a hot take. Jesus went up to one man and he said, hey, I want you to follow me. And the man said, yeah, Jesus, I'd love to follow you, but let me first just go bury my dad. And Jesus said, no, let the dead bury the dead. Like, what? What kind of response is this? Jesus was full of hot takes. But I want to give you one hot take that we see that Jesus gives this man named Zacchaeus. If you were raised in church like me, maybe y'all know a little bit about Zacchaeus. Come on, anybody know about Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. And he climbed up in a sycamore tree. Come on, some of y'all, yeah. Some of y'all grew up in children's church. We didn't call it e-kids back then, in the nursery. Listen, I grew up hearing about this man singing these songs, but I don't think I ever fully realized just how controversial this encounter was that Jesus had with a man named Zacchaeus. I want us to dive into it for just a moment. If you have your Bibles, you can go ahead and open to Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19. I'm going to read a few verses, 10 to be exact, Luke 19, 1 through 10. Now it says, now Jesus had entered into Jericho and was passing through. And I think that's important to note that Jesus was just passing through. Now, there was a man there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was. One translation says that he wanted desperately to see Jesus. But because he was short, come on y'all, my brother was vertically challenged, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and he climbed a sycamore tree to see him since Jesus was coming that way. But Jesus reached the spot and he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. Zacchaeus had climbed higher and now we have Jesus asking him to come lower. I think there's a spiritual principle here that anytime we take our relationship with Jesus to another level, it's always met with him asking us to come down lower. If we say, Jesus, I want to take things to another level, he always invites us to fall even deeper in love with him. And so now Jesus is looking up at this man and telling him to come down lower. And he said, I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and he welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and they began to mutter and gossip and point their finger. He's going to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and he said to the Lord, look, Lord, here now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, Today, salvation has come to this house because this man, too, is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. What Zacchaeus did not know, but was soon about to find out, is that he had set out to seek after the one who is already seeking after him. And so I think if you were to look at this story, this short story, this obscure encounter, really it could be summed up with this one idea. That one man's desperation was followed by Jesus' invitation. Zacchaeus' desperation to see was followed by Jesus' invitation to stay. And so just for the next few moments, if you're taking notes, you can write this down. I want to talk along the lines of this hot take. Come down, I'm coming over. Come down, I'm coming over. I think right off the bat, we have to look at some dynamics that's happening right here in this story because these 10 verses that I read, there's a lot that's going on. I would offer to you that there's more going on underneath the surface than there is above the surface. There's some dynamics that we have to understand. The first thing, if we're fully going to grasp what happened here when Jesus encountered Zacchaeus, you have to understand that Zacchaeus was a tax collector. And he wasn't just a tax collector, he was a chief tax collector. And what this would signify is that anywhere he went, he was hated among all. He was gossiped about. His people were pointing their fingers at him. We see later in the story that he was called a sinner, but I believe that word doesn't even accurately portray what they used in their language. He would have been a dog. He would have been the scum of the earth. He would have been ostracized by everyone. And here's the reason why, because he actually was working against his people and working for a foreign power known as the Roman government. And the Roman government would mandate down that Zacchaeus was to tax his own people, but whatever he would tax above what the Roman government would require, Zacchaeus could keep for himself. So he was lining his pockets based off the backs of his own people. You can see why he would be hated. He was all about himself. He was full of greed and full of pride. The only person that Zacchaeus was concerned about was Zacchaeus. So on the outside, I think that Zacchaeus had what everybody would have wanted. He had the world by the tail. Everything looked good on the outside, but I would offer to you that even though it looked like he had it all, Zacchaeus was empty. He was rich, yet in so many ways, Zacchaeus was poor. He was surrounded by a crowd, yet he was lonely. He had physical sight, yet he couldn't see Jesus. I think if Zacchaeus' life screamed any one thing, it would be this, that you can have it all, but if you don't have Jesus, you have nothing. I'm going to say that one more time. You can have it all, but if you don't have Jesus, you have nothing. The other thing that's bubbling up underneath the surface of this story is you've got to look at what happened right before this story. In Luke 19, 1 through 10, we see this encounter with Zacchaeus. But at the end of Luke 18, just a few verses before, we see that there was another encounter that Jesus had. Right before he made his way into Jericho, he encountered a man named Bartimaeus. Maybe you have heard of him. Bartimaeus was blind, so he also could not see Jesus. The other thing you got to realize here is that when the Bible was originally written, it was not written with chapters and verses. That came later so that we could locate Scripture. So we tend to separate stories like this, but in reality, these stories happen back to back. So watch this. Jesus is walking into Jericho, sees this blind man. The blind man is reaching out and asking for help. He hears Jesus coming his way, and he says, "Would you have mercy on me and heal me?" Jesus, doing what only Jesus can do, reaches down and he heals the man and is instantly able to see. And then he goes into Jericho, and moments later, he finds another man named Zacchaeus who also cannot see. Bartimaeus could not see because he had an eye problem. Zacchaeus could not see because he had an eye problem. Bartimaeus couldn't see because he was blind. Zacchaeus couldn't see because he had pride. Both of them will block your view of Jesus. And as you look at this dynamic of the story, it begins to make a little bit more sense of what is really happening underneath the surface. Why is this a hot take? Why did I choose this story to kick off this series? I'll tell you why. There's a couple reasons why this is a hot take. Number one, Jesus was never supposed to encounter Zacchaeus. This was not on Jesus' schedule. This was not on his Google Calendar for the day. He was headed somewhere else. If he was passing through, that tells me his eyes were set on another destination. Specifically, he was heading towards Jerusalem. As he's walking through the city of Jericho, though, there's something that happens. There's something about a man that wants to see Jesus that catches Jesus' attention. Now, we shouldn't be surprised by this because this is actually Jesus' MO. This is his norm. If you study it out, you'll find that over half of the miracles that Jesus performs were in fact interruptions. This is important to note. If you're anything like me and you pray bold prayers, God, I pray that you use me. God, I pray that you help me to be more bold in my faith. God, I pray that you help me tell more people about you. This is important. If you pray prayers like this, that you have to understand that if God is going to use you, many times it's not going to come at a time that's most convenient for you. In fact, another way I want to say it is many times the inconveniences that are in your schedule are actually the ingredients for the miracle. What we feel like could be on our accident is actually on heaven's purpose. And so if you want to be obedient to Jesus, you got to be ready for him to kind of shake things up in your schedule a little bit. And you got to remain obedient to what he's telling you to do. And that's what Jesus was doing. He was remaining obedient. He had his eyes somewhere else, but yet he allowed his eyes to shift to this man that was desperate to see him. The other reason why it's a hot take is because all throughout the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, never, ever, ever, ever do we find where Jesus invited himself to somebody else's house. This is the only time. And the reason for that is because it's cultural. This would go against hospitality culture. You would never invite yourself into the home of somebody else. As bad as you would want to go, you would wait on the invitation. So I asked myself as I was thinking and preparing and studying for this, why would Jesus stop and invite himself at this man's house? There's so many other people, in my own estimation, that deserved that honor. So many more people that he encountered along the way that I would have put above Zacchaeus, if I were to be honest. But here's the only thing that I could conclude, is that there was something about this man's desire to see Jesus that caught his attention. That Jesus reserved this exclusive invitation for the one who had audacious desperation. What does it look like to have audacious desperation? What does it look like to have an audacious faith? If we're going to have a faith like Zacchaeus had, I think there's a couple things that are needed. I want you to write these down. Here's the first thing. You're going to have to change your pursuit. Change your pursuit. The first thing that we see is that Zacchaeus began to run. And we have to realize it's important for us to understand that not only what he was running to was important, but also what he was running from was important. He was running to get a better perspective and a better view of Jesus, but he was also running from the crowd. Because here's what I've come to realize. There is nothing that will block your view of Jesus quite like the wrong crowd. Luke is the only one, this is crazy to me, Luke is the only one in the Gospels who actually uses the verbiage and talks about how Jesus got lost in a crowd. And he doesn't just do it once, he talks about it twice. In Luke 19, we see this story with Zacchaeus, but we also see in Luke chapter 2. Maybe you've read about this before. When Jesus was just a boy, we never find anywhere else where we get kind of a glimpse of Jesus' life when he was a preteen. But Luke gives us just a quick snapshot. And this is a snapshot that he gives us, that Jesus' family was traveling for a festival. And after the festival was done, his family and his parents traveled back home. And after a day, his parents found that Jesus was not in the crowd. How many of you know that that was a bad day for Mary and Joseph? How many of you have ever lost anything before? Come on, anybody? Like, it's one thing to lose your keys. It's a completely separate thing to lose the Son of God. I imagine there was some feuds. There was some arguing that was going on within the family dynamic. And what I love the most is what happened when they realized that Jesus was not in their crowd. Their number one thing that they resorted to was to change their pursuit. They quickly turned around and they went back and they found Jesus in the temple. And what I love about that is they found Jesus in the exact place that they had left him. I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I'll speak for me. Anytime that I have realized that there is distance between me and Jesus, it's never because he left me. The separation or the lack of connection is never on his end of the equation. It's always on my end of the equation. My mind went back to about a month ago. I took my son to the park, and I've got 3 boys, and this is my middle son, Maverick. He's 4 years old, and he loves to go to the park. It's like one of his favorite things to do, and he's got like a hierarchy of parks. He's got his favorite park, second favorite park, third favorite park. And so it was one of the days that I was off, and I just wanted to spend the day with him. And so I said, Maverick, which park do you want to go to? And he told me exactly which park. And so, I'm all right, buddy, let's go. And I was going to do this whole thing. I was going to take him to the park. We can go get ice cream and just spend the day with him. And so he went to the pantry and started packing his stuff because that's kind of his flow. Like he just starts packing his lunchbox full of snacks. And so he grabs all of it. I put him in the car. We head to his favorite park. And so I grab his stuff and I go and sit on the bench. And I look at him. I'm like, hey, buddy, there's a lot of people here. So you go play. You go have fun. But, hey, Daddy is right here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm watching you, okay? And I've got all of your snacks. If you want to come back, come grab them, whatever. And you play. You have a great time. A few moments had passed, and I noticed that this mom was kind of looking at me out of the corner of her eye. And I'm like, man, what's going on? And so I kind of look over at her, and we make eye contact, and she's like, hey, sir, are you his dad? And I'm like, yeah, is everything okay? I want to make sure he wouldn't do anything he shouldn't do. And she's like, no, everything's fine. He just, couldn't find you. He said he had lost you. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, buddy, Daddy's right here. And so a few minutes pass, and there's another lady that keeps looking at me, and I'm like, man, I'm kind of putting the pieces together a little bit. And so I look over at her, and she kind of comes up to me, and she's like, hey, sir, is this your son? And I'm like, yeah, he's my son. And she's like, everything's fine. He just keeps going around to all the adults in the park and said, hey, I've lost my daddy. Can y'all please help me find my daddy? And I'm like, okay, buddy, like, Daddy is right here. I'm not going anywhere. And it happened again. And it just kept happening. So finally, like, I pull him over and I kind of like get in his face and I make eye contact with him like, buddy, I told you, Daddy is right here. I didn't go anywhere. Like where I started, this is where I've stayed and I've got your stuff. And whenever you want to come back, you can come back to me. And here's what I begin to think, that this is exactly how we treat Jesus so many times. Because when I distance myself from him, it's so easy for people to block my view of him. And what was happening is he was getting further and further and further away from me without even realizing it. And the further he got, people were blocking his view of Daddy. And this is what happens to so many of us in our faith, that we allow there to be barriers and distractions that block our view of Jesus. And that is exactly what's happening with Zacchaeus, that there's pride in his heart, but there's people in his view. And he can't get an accurate view of Jesus. So what does he do? He resorts to running. He changes his pursuit. And this is a huge deal, by the way, because men did not run. If anybody saw a man running, it would have been uncalled for, which, if I could be honest with you, I think it's the same in our society. I hate running. I think it's absolutely uncalled for, okay? Somebody better be chasing me, or I need to be chasing something or whatever. Maybe one of those gorillas. I don't know. But listen, I hate running. But in those days, it wasn't just a preference thing. It was a cultural thing that men did not run. And there's multiple reasons for that, but the main reason is because it would signify that whatever that man was running after was more important than himself. And maybe, just maybe, this is where the story changes, because finally Zacchaeus found someone that's greater than himself. And he's running after and pursuing the one that he realizes just might be able to change his life. And he climbs up into a sycamore tree. And this is what I love. I think the story begins to shift right here, because Jesus looks up. If you read the scripture, it says that Jesus looked up. In a crowd of people that would look over him, Jesus looked up at him and began to make eye contact with this broken, messed up man that needed life transformation. This tells me that when Jesus catches your attention, you'll catch Jesus' attention. And he began to look in his eyes and begin to speak into his life. You know, there's a book that was written by a man named Andy Crouch. The book was entitled The Life That We're Looking For. And this is the synopsis of the first chapter. The first chapter, he talks about how infants after delivery spend an hour in what doctors call quiet alert. And though infants can only see 8 to 12 inches from their face, they are searching for another face, especially one that will look back at them. Developmental psychologist Edward Tronick doubles down on this idea, and he demonstrates it in an experiment called still face, where infants and toddlers were told to sit across from their caregivers, and the caregivers were told to avoid all facial expressions altogether. And in a matter of minutes, these children would display intense regulation and ultimately would collapse in distress on the floor. Here was the conclusion of this study, that we as humans were made for connection. We were made to have the one who loves us and created us to look back at us. If this principle is true in the natural, I would offer you that it's the same in the spiritual. And if that is the case, then I want to give you my second point, because the first thing is we got to change our pursuit. The second thing is we got to exchange our perspective. So if he changed his pursuit, he had to run. But to exchange his perspective, he had to climb. And he didn't just climb any tree, he climbed a sycamore tree. Luke didn't have to give this detail when he wrote this, but I think Luke wanted us to understand the importance of a sycamore tree. Sycamore trees could not be planted inside the city. The main reason is because sycamore trees would get way too large and their branches would go out way too far. And so if you were going to plant one, you had to plant it outside of the city. And so what would happen is, because they were so big, they would provide these shade structures. And over time, it was custom that if anybody was unclean or deemed unworthy in the city, they would be cast outside of the city limits and they were forced to sit under the shade of a sycamore tree. And so Zacchaeus doesn't wait for somebody else to cast him out. What he does is he goes by himself and sits under the sycamore tree, and then doesn't just sit there. He begins to climb the sycamore tree. It was almost like a self-identification of saying, I know that I'm unclean, but I'm not just unclean, I'm at the peak of uncleanliness. If you look at the perspectives of the story, we find a few different angles. We see that Zacchaeus looked at himself and figured out how unworthy he was. He saw how unclean he was. But we also see the crowd call him a sinner. But this is the most simplistic yet most important part of the story. If Zacchaeus is calling himself unclean, the crowd's calling him a sinner. Look what Jesus calls him. Zacchaeus. He just calls him by his name. You know that neuroscientists did a study, and they said that the one word that all of humanity loves the most is the sound of our own name. Scientifically speaking, this is what happens when you hear somebody say your name. Whether you realize this or not, when somebody says your name, this is what happens neurologically. There's an instant personal connection. There's increased attention. Your listening becomes more engaged. There is a dopamine release that happens. You have enhanced memory. It was almost like Jesus was saying, I need you to understand what I'm about to tell you and never forget it. I'm about to change your life. And he said, Zacchaeus. This is important because Zacchaeus knew what his name meant. His name meant pure. The very thing that he thought he wasn't, Jesus said, you are. Because the crowd would look at him and see him for what he used to be. Jesus saw him for what he was supposed to be. How many times do we do that in our own life, that we look at our own past and our own mistakes, and other people are bringing up the headlines from our past, and we see ourselves as that person? Jesus looks at us and sees us for where we're going, not for where we were. You still have a purpose. You still have a plan. He still has a destiny for your life. I don't know about you, but I'm so grateful that Jesus doesn't look at the opinions of others for him to develop his own opinion of me. There was a man by the name of Steve Wilhite. In 1987, he created something. I would imagine, if I had to guess, that when I say Steve Wilhite, probably none of you know who this man is just by his name. But I think a lot of you maybe would know what he is famous for, what he created. In 1987, he created this short video format, a specific type of media, and it's spelled GIF. Anybody ever heard of that before? GIF. I'm spelling it on purpose because I don't want to tell you the name of it. Because as we're on this topic of hot takes, here's another hot take. There is massive disagreement on how do you actually pronounce G-I-F. And this is about to be a group project because I'm curious how you pronounce G-I-F. So on the count of 3, I just want you to yell it out. And I don't want you to be ashamed. Don't be jumping the gun. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I have no idea what y'all just said, by the way. They just all blurred together. But if I had to guess, there was a lot of you that said GIF. And a lot of you that said GIF. There was an interview that was done with Steve Wilhite, and they asked him, they said, hey, now that we have your attention, there is, I'm sure, as you know, there is just a lot of disagreement on how do you actually pronounce G-I-F. So for the record, could you just tell us how to say this specific media that you created? You created it, so tell us how to say it. And he said, yeah, I would love to. The correct way to say it is GIF, just like the peanut butter. And I want to prove a point really quickly because there was a follow-up article that was done right after this. And a lady said, I know what Steve Wilhite said, but all of society is calling it the opposite. All of society is calling it GIF, and he says it's GIF. I think if all of society is calling it one thing, that we should just call it that. But here's the point that I want to give you. The person who created a thing gets to name the thing. And so listen to me. For some of you, listen, you're not a sum of your past mistakes. You're not your worst moment. You're not a different season of your life. Listen, when God created you, he forever has naming rights over you. He has a purpose. He has a plan. He has a destiny for your life. You have permission to quit answering to names that God never gave you. You have permission. A few days ago, I was sitting by myself, just spending some time with Jesus, and I was thinking about this message, thinking about this man's desperation, him running through the crowd, desperate to get a glimpse at a man that could forever change his life. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking and I was praying. And oftentimes when I get alone, my mind just kind of reverts back. I just let my mind wander sometimes, and my mind will go back to me just growing up, and being a child. I remembered a time of when I was just a little boy, and I was in school. And as I was growing up in school, I grew up in a great family, had great parents, and my parents taught me to be respectful to my teachers and to be respectful to other classmates and my friends. And so I, as a kid, I grew up and never really got in trouble, so to speak. Obviously, I was a kid and would do crazy stuff, but, I always tried to live the right way. And I remember being just this little boy one time. And I remember the class specifically that I was sitting in. It was Miss Fisher's class. And I was sitting there in that desk. And as just a child, really, I remember hearing a voice come over the intercom. And it said, Miss Fisher, I need you to send Dusty Brown to the principal's office. And in that exact moment, my stomach just dropped. And have y'all ever been in a moment like that before? Like, I'm not necessarily even talking about school. Maybe you get called into the supervisor's office, and you're like, I know I didn't do anything wrong. But then, like, as you walk towards the office, you're like, did I really do something wrong? Like, maybe I did, and you start just replaying, like, everything that you've done for the past week. Like, well, that conversation, well, maybe, yeah, man, and you just start replaying all of it. Like, I wonder. And that's exactly what was happening to me. I was just this little kid. I've never been in trouble before. Why am I getting called to the principal's office? And I get into the office, and I go to the lady at the desk, and my voice was quivering. And like, hey, I'm Dusty, and I got called to the principal's office. And she's like, okay, go ahead and sit right outside of his office, and he'll call you in there in just a little bit. And I walk in there to his office, and I sit down, and my hands are shaking, and my bony knees are shaking. And I'm just sitting there as a little kid. And he looked at me. And he said, "Are you Dusty Brown?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, Are you the Dusty Brown that's been bullying kids on the playground?" "Yes, sir." Mind you, I did not do any of this, what he was about to say. I just was so scared. I just said yes to everything that the principal said. He's like, "Are you bullying the kids?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir." Like, "Are you cussing at all the kids on the playground?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." And he just went down this list of all of these things, and I'm just like, yeah, that's me. And I didn't do any of these things. He's like, "Well, Dusty, if you did all these things," he's like, "I'm going to write you up." And he wrote me a referral, and he gave it to me. And I ran home, and I was crying my eyes out. And I went to my parents, and I gave them the referral, and I'm like, "I got in trouble today." And they're reading through it, and they're like, "Dusty, you didn't do all that." I said, "I know I didn't do all that." They said, "Then why did you admit to saying you did all that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I was scared. I just said yes to everything." And see, my parents were these kind of parents, y'all. They're like, "Oh, no, baby, get back in the car. We're going back up to the school right now." And they loaded me up. And I got back in the car, and we walked right back into that same principal's office. And they said, "Hey, I don't really know what's going on, but my baby didn't do any of that. I know he said he did, but he didn't do it." So we did some investigating. The school did some investigating. There were 2 Dusty Browns at the same school. And that other Dusty Brown just didn't have the same aspirations in life that I did, I don't think. And I'm not judging him. I just think maybe a little bit more of a troubled kid than I was. And here's the other day as I was thinking about this is where my mind went back to. Even as a child, I knew that I could run back to the one who created me and named me to let me know I don't have to agree with somebody's incorrect version of me. Listen, there's some of you that have been agreeing with the incorrect version of yourself. And maybe it's just the way that you're viewing yourself, but it might be how other people are viewing you. And I'm going to tell you, Jesus doesn't see you like that. He sees you as Zacchaeus, the one who's pure. He sees the destiny he's placed inside of you. Zacchaeus looks down from the top of the tree, feeling so unclean, yet Jesus looks up, makes eye contact, and he says, "Come down. I'm coming over, and I'm about to change your life." And he comes down and he accepts him into his house. And I just have to imagine, what was dinner like that night in Zacchaeus' house? What was the conversation like? I just have to feel like he would have said what I said at the beginning. "Zacchaeus, this whole time you've been seeking after me, but I've been seeking after you. Because I've come to seek the lost. I've come to seek the broken. I've come to seek the one who doesn't have it all together. Because Zacchaeus, what you feel like you're doing for me, I've already been doing for you. Because you climbed a tree for me, I'm about to carry one for you. You would sweat up that tree, but I'm about to bleed on a tree for you. You would give away all of your wealth, but I'm about to give away my life for you." And can I just tell you, every single one of you that are under the sound of my voice, Jesus did all of that. Not just for Zacchaeus, because the truth is, we all are Zacchaeus. And the good news is, here's the hot take. No matter what your past says about you, Jesus still has purpose for you. That's the hot take. That's the hot take. So I want us right now, I'm over time. I just want you to close your eyes really quickly. Just feel like maybe there's some people that are in here that have come in broken, hurting, dealing with identity issues, just like Zacchaeus was. Have pride in their heart, but people in their view. That's blocking your view of Jesus. Father, I pray for them right now. Those that need to change their pursuit and run after you. There's no greater decision that one can make than to run in the right direction, to run into you. The righteous run into you and are safe. That's what the Bible says. So God, those that need to make that decision right now, God, may they do it and never look back. But God, I also pray for those that are in here that maybe they've already given their yes, but they just need to exchange their perspective. They've been looking at themselves. They've been looking at life wrong. And they need to lay eyes on you. Lord, they need to look into the eyes of the one that looks back at them. God, may they do that right now. We thank you, Lord, that you're not done with our story, that you still have a purpose and a destiny and a plan for our life. In Jesus' name, amen.